program you are about to see contains only a portion of the information that is to be known about the Iowa Powder Mills. While the powder mills, located at the foot of Chatfield Park, may only seem to be just another place to work, it was in fact a way of life for a great number of our relatives for a little over a half-century. It's no secret what the DuPont Corporation has become, but what is rarely now known is that at one time the only product that they manufactured was explosive powders, and the largest of their operation was here on the edge of Keokuk. The property upon which the mills rest is owned by Roger and Mary Sue Chatfield. Without their permission and assistance, this program would not have been possible. We would also like to mention that the property is indeed private, and persons wishing to see the ruins should seek the Chatfields' permission before attempting to enter the grounds. This program is necessary as expansion has begun to change the landscape around the powder mills. We feel it is important at this time to research and preserve all that we can about what went on from 1890 to 1949. In 1886, Elliott Rice and E.C. Meacham, general agents for the DuPont Corporation, began to complain about their difficulty in obtaining an adequate supply of blasting powder to satisfy the needs of expanding Midwestern coal fields. In 1887, Francis Gurney DuPont, descendant of E.I. DuPont, began a study to see what the possibilities were of expanding the DuPont's black powder manufacturing facilities to the Midwest. Much of the product they manufactured was being shipped to this area, and the shipping expenses of both the raw materials and finished products were calculated. He concluded after his lengthy study that building a new plant would be more profitable than continuing to manufacture and ship his product from Delaware. Elliott Rice was given the task of scouting for a suitable location. The Chicago agent lost no time. On January 6, 1888, he indicated he was preparing a specially marked map of the mining sections of Illinois, Iowa, and Missouri, and would soon submit it for inspection. Because coal mining in and around Keokuk was such a growing market in the 1880s, the studies revealed that over 400,000 kegs of blasting powder were utilized each year within a 165-mile radius of Keokuk. Many factors had to be considered before constructing a plant that manufactured explosives, especially the fact that the neighbors might not approve. Other things such as land, labor cost, safety, and the dependence on water influenced the selection of the Keokuk area for the plant's site. Labor unions were a consideration at the time, and if the powder workmen were not located right near the coal fields, they wouldn't be contaminated by such contagious ideas. Furthermore, because of the hazards of the powder manufacturing process, it was important that an isolated spot be chosen. Water was essential for operating a steam-powered plant and for the manufacturing process itself. The common practice of employing a dummy buyer was used, and the mystery began for many area residents and newspapers. Elliott Rice purchased 160 acres of land from J.J. Durfee, and several hundred acres owned by a local official, Judge Daniel Moore, hence the name of the town now called Moore. Opinions starting April 21st in the Daily Gate City and the Daily Constitution Democrat hypothesized on the intriguing question of what the big land deals were all about. Opinions were expressed that the 700 acres of rugged terrain were being acquired by meat packers, by real estate agents, or by a railroad company. None of these, of course, was the case, and DuPont started building its first plant apart from its only other facility located on the Brandywine River in Delaware. Black powder was E.I. DuPont's introduction into manufacturing, and is what they were involved in producing in France before bringing their process to the United States in 1802. By March of 1890, the construction was completed, and steam was ready to be turned on. On April 17, 1890, the first powder was produced. By 1901, the plant was the largest blasting powder site in the U.S. On April 16, 1940, in a celebration at the Hotel Iowa commemorating its 50th anniversary, DuPont President Lamont DuPont congratulated plant manager L.C. Myers. He stated in a letter that the plant at Moore had the distinction of being the largest powder mill DuPont had. In fact, it was the largest such plant anywhere in the world. The entire facility would eventually occupy 1,100 acres, including the plant proper and the 2 company villages with approximately 50 homes. The lake was constructed to supply the plant with water necessary for steam and other operations. Fire hydrants still stand throughout the mill grounds. Transportation was a large factor, both in the way Keokuk was selected and in the way the mills operated. Within a mile of the center of the plant ran the tracks of the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad, as well as the availability of barge traffic. Within the actual powder mill grounds ran many miles of track that guided the small steam engines carrying powder in its various stages from one end to the other. There were brass rails leading into and out of many of the buildings to prevent the wheels of the train and carts from creating sparks. Many more miles of steam and air pipes ran through the grounds and are still evident today. In March of 1932, it was reported in the Delegate City that 35 deer and about 400 sheep were kept on the grounds to hold down the growth of underbrush, thus minimizing the risk of fire and the loss of life. Men and women alike worked in the mills. In fact, the first woman to be hired here by DuPont was Bernice Rockelman Allen, who still lives in Keokuk. Ken Horner worked in the mills, as did Bill Hagmeyer, shown here in the mill yards being interviewed by Dan Droe for a video being produced. Many of the workers lived in the company villages, and still others came out from Keokuk by way of rail cars. In the winter, many farmers would bring their teams of horses and work at the mills, doing various tasks ranging from construction projects to production work. DuPont in the early part of this century had a tremendous economic impact on the Keokuk area. Powdertown indeed was its own little city, as early on you didn't just hop in the car and go to town within 5 minutes. People were much closer and depended on each other during those times. DuPont even had its own ball team that traveled around and brought fear to many area competing teams. The work was difficult and dangerous, but the people were tough. DuPont for years had provided good wages, perhaps the best of any industry in the area at that time. But times were about to change. 9 years after the plant was cited for being the biggest and the best, the workers were sent home for the last time. A walk through the powder mills reveals ruins that are mysterious and dangerous. One can't help but pause and listen for a moment to the silence that is deafening, save for the trickling of the streams running through the old ghost town. A little imagination added to the surroundings, and you'd swear you could hear the workers, the old train, the boiler as it spews a cloud of black smoke, and the large mills as they might spin and grind the charcoal into a fine pulp for processing. The roar of the mills is no more, and only a few empty, sagging buildings are visible, where once stood one of the oldest industrial firms in the Midwest. This is the ghost of old Powdertown. Man-made structures may rot and decay or be devastated when unused, but nature has a way of perpetuating itself, living on in all its beauty. So it is with the rustic grounds that surround the site of the black powder mills. Even today, the tree-lined, meandering, and seemingly perplexed roads and woodland paths, canopied with overhanging branches, are things of beauty. The site's untamed vegetation is perhaps the nearest thing to forest primeval that many tri-state residents may ever be privileged to see. The little hamlet of Moore was established as a railroad stop. The tract of more than 1,000 acres was purchased by the E.I. DuPont de Nemours Powder Company for the purpose of producing